Is it showing on your end?
Yeah, for some reason my hold on. Holy crap, hold on. My what do you call it? It's
Is it
not
showing on
working.
your end?
Let me see why this is not working. Ah,
That confusion has led to a considerable amount of activity at both at the local levels and on state levels, which we'll discuss in some detail here as we go through these particular states. But I can tell you that at the end, the light at the end of the tunnel is that there is a growing awareness as we are able to communicate with these various state and local agencies and legislative bodies about what that difference is. And the majority of them are starting to understand it better. And I think with the help of the advocates that are participating with us, I think it's fabulous. And let me just call out some of the people that on the AKA team that have really taken a specialized interest in these local areas, led by Laura Romney, Heidi Sikora, John Shinholzer, and Misty Brown, and a number of others who have stood up and organized and started to motivate the Kratom consumers around the country to help on these efforts. And I know there's many that I've left off, but I can tell you that it's made a tremendous difference as we start to see the energy develop around some of these advocacy activities that are making a difference. And we saw it happen in Kansas City. We've seen it happen in a number of other jurisdictions where that consumer voice really has made a difference, and it has altered the path that has been followed by some of these local jurisdictions as they've gone through. So what I thought I would do first is go through some of the states. I'll go through them. I'll say briefly, but then if you have questions at the end about more that you would like to have about some of these states, I'm glad to loop back. We could do this in the Q&A part of it as we go forward. But I'm glad to answer any questions that is going on. First, let's start out with the state of California. It is a huge market. It is one where probably some of the largest 7-OH manufacturers are located. There is a huge presence there. And but for the confusion that was generated by the 7-OH community in California, we would today have a KCPA. But in its stead, we have the California Department of Public Health has taken the position that based on the language that is in the FDA and Kratom webpage, that they are authorized under their state statute as it's called the Sherman Act, which covers food products, that they are able to ban all Kratom products because they are designated as foods. And they ignore the fact that under the federal law that there is a distinction between a conventional food product and these products that are dietary supplements, dietary ingredients, and botanical supplements that are classified under federal law as foods, but they're not conventional foods. And that confusion has opened the door for the California Department of Public Health to designate kratom as an illegal substance. And they literally, in some cases, their inspectors are handing off as a justification for the seizure of kratom products. They use the FDA and Kratom webpage with a Xerox copy of the webpage in its language. We're working very, very carefully with the FDA to negotiate changes in the FDA and Kratom webpage, and we are making progress. It moves as slow as molasses, I can tell you. Very frustrating. And so we are hopeful that within the next 30 days that we'll see an update to that 7-OH and Kratom webpage, and it will have some positive language that will at least make the distinction between natural kratom leaf products and those that are marketed under dietary supplement regulations under the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act for making structure function claims, or for those companies that are making therapeutic claims. And I'll just say as an aside, if you look at any of the justifications that are on the market for 7-OH products today, both in terms of their marketing and the explanations being made by the industry groups that represent them, it's all about therapeutic claims. And even if they had met the threshold, which they did not, for market entry, they wouldn't be able to stay on the market today because they're justifying the 7-OH existence on the marketplace based on therapeutic claims that are patently illegal. We recommended to the FDA that they take action with over 120 kratom manufacturers who have made those same illegal therapeutic claims. And we've added 18 of the 7-OH, and we're adding more of them, reporting them to the FDA. So I think that we're making progress with the FDA, and I think hopefully we're going to find better language. We still have a strong contingent of policy people at the FDA who are not fond of kratom. They believe, and their fundamental problem is that people are sitting at home self-medicating with it. And they think that that raises potential problems, both for health impacts and for the perception of the value that a botanical supplement can have. But those people are dwindling in terms of their number and of their power within the FDA infrastructure. And given that the commissioner of the FDA is so adamant that they're not focused on natural kratom leaf products, I think we're making real progress. And just as an aside, on the other side of the equation, where the recommendation was made to the Drug Enforcement Administration to do scheduling of 7-OH, I have been told as recently as just a couple of days ago that they're making real progress on it, and that we can expect that shortly, whatever in bureaucracies that means, that they're going to move on a temporary scheduling of 7-OH, which means that 30 days after its publication in the Federal Register, that it will become the law. And there is no judicial review, which is important because that's a delay opportunity. And there is no public comment allowed under that particular scheduling. Now, everyone, of course, knows that they did exactly that same thing in 2016, and we were able to successfully, for the first time in 82 previous attempts for scheduling under the temporary scheduling provisions with the 3 factors that are considered for a substance like kratom. But the significant difference is that there was a substantial body of scientific evidence, peer-reviewed public literature, and there was a history of use that was significant over long term on the safety of kratom, with a lot of literature that combined with it. And that is not present for the 7-OH people. And you will hear them try to jump around on that, and they'll try to slip and slide and outright lie about it in some cases, saying that there was all of this. And now they've turned the argument to say, well, there wasn't anything more in 2016 for natural leaf kratom. That is not true. And they have no basis, none, zero, zip, to make any claim that there was a reasonable basis for safety prior to market introduction in September of 2023 of any 7-OH product, because that is a chemical formulation for which there is no record of safe use, nor is there a single peer-reviewed published article. So despite the defenses of the 7-OH, and they'll cry and they'll squawk, and maybe some on this call will try to do that, but I can tell you they are wrong, and that they simply cannot justify anything they're trying to claim on that. And I'm looking forward to when they actually come out and say that they are going to do the scheduling, and then for a 2-year period, 7-OH will be banned. And then if there truly was an interest, or is an interest that exists about making 7-OH into a product that's acceptable for marketing, we'll start to see the science develop. But we all know from the mouth of the chief scientific officer in January of 2025, when he participated in an AK leadership summit in Miami in early January, when asked the question whether there was any scientific studies prior to market entry that is required by federal law to be there for the labeling instructions or the serving sizes, he said there was not. And he hoped that they would be able to have that evidence sometime in mid 2025 or in 2026. We're now approaching 2026. They have nothing to offer in terms of the actual research that would be required to justify market entry. And by the way, they shouldn't be on the market unless they had met that standard, which they initially had assured me that they did, and that turned out to be inaccurate. So I think that that we can see some progress here, and we're looking forward to what the DEA is going to do in terms of that scheduling recommendation. So let's jump in back to California. California currently has a rule in place by the Department of Public Health that no kratom can be sold. It's being sporadically enforced. When it does get enforced, there's a lot of activity, obviously, from the press standpoint, but we're seeing some progress in some of the individual localities where at first they were jumping on the bandwagon for that, but now they're seeing it. And I think we're making real progress. And you've seen some of the specific localities in the last couple of weeks where we've made progress there. And thank you to all of the advocates that turned out, because you've made a real difference in that area. In the state of Washington, there is a pending activity that is currently on suspense with the Department of Pharmacy, awaiting for state legislative action. And we are in discussions with a sponsor of the KCPA who will be highly influential. Our lobbying team is in place there, and we're looking forward to getting this off the ground very quickly in the state of Washington in order to establish a KCPA. Despite very significant budget constraints that are happening in all these states, by the way, that we have what we call our low burden on the regulatory agencies legislation that will allow for the states to properly regulate pure leaf kratom products and to ban 7-OH, which will probably just be an affirmation of what the feds are doing, hopefully in most of these legislative sessions. In the state of Idaho, there's been an increased interest driven largely by the anti-kratom crowd. And we have secured a sponsor and a lobbying team there just today. And I can tell you that we're in very good shape there, because we had significant work a couple of years ago in Idaho, but were blocked by the chairman of the Senate Agricultural Committee, who just didn't believe that anything should be marketed that wasn't FDA prescription drugs. He is now gone, and the chairman of that committee is likely going to be our sponsor of the bill. So we're looking forward to having good success in Idaho. In the state of Montana, some of you may have been on the call when the Board of Pharmacy held their call. It was extremely distressing, because going in, there was at least an interest in just banning 7-OH. But the anti-kratom crowd jumped on there, some of it with their gross misrepresentations about the safety profile of kratom, claims that their loved ones had died of kratom, citing medical examiner and coroner reports that are not subject to rigorous nor any standardized postmortem investigations, where they take the convenient step to call it kratom. And I can tell you, we have seen time and time and time again where, when they're examined closely, that they are always polydrug use, or that they are abuse of other substances that are prescriptions, for example, not necessarily illicit drugs that they're taking, or that there was underlying health conditions that were actually in play here. But it's easy, it's convenient for these medical examiners to take the issue du jour and claim it. And there was lots of discussion, all of it either outdated or inaccurate, that was being discussed, and the Board of Pharmacy came close to voting for a ban on all substances, but agreed finally to defer it until February, because I argued strongly, as did a couple of others, and they really needed to look at what the FDA wanted, rather than listening to these cries from the wilderness of people that were espousing false information, inaccurate, outdated information, as I said. So I think that we're on track in Montana when they meet again. Now, Montana's legislature is not in session. They meet every other year, like a couple of other states. And so they won't be in session this coming year. So the battleground will be with the Board of Pharmacy. And I think that we're going to be able to make progress. Again, I know all of you are aware that we have a problem in Utah again, because of an individual senator who has decided to listen to the voices of those people who are making these erroneous claims about the deaths of loved ones being attributable only to kratom, naturally kratom products, and you hear it over and over again, and yet many of them won't produce the autopsies. Most of them won't admit that there was some accountability. It was interesting that in the hearing, that Senator McKell, who has become the champion of the anti-kratom crowd, that he had a witness who talked about how he had been in addiction recovery before. He had struggled with this. He had actually established an addiction recovery center, which he actively runs today, was driving through a convenience store that he was well known in. And the attendant said, "Hey, you ought to try this new energy drink." And he handed them this bottle, which he admitted he didn't read the directions. So he abused the directions, slugged it down, and when it was supposed to be 2 servings. Um, and with advice on the label saying, if you're a first-time user, to go even more slowly than that. And he found himself addicted to this product. And it was not a kratom product. It was not a pure kratom product. And yet that was what the messaging, the confusing message that Senator McKell was providing. And then he trotted out one state official after another who were testifying about the hazards of kratom, including the poison control people who, even though it was blurred over, had recognized that the 7OH was now listed as one of the categories for reporting that started in March of this year. And so anything prior to that would have been a mixture of kratom and 7OH products and other substances that were not clearly identified, the polydrug use issue. And they had the medical examiner saying most deaths are polydrug use, but he glossed over that. So he created a narrative of anti-kratom that really needs to be corrected. And so we've got, unfortunately, in the state of Utah, a huge battle ahead of us in order to correct the record of what is being misstated. And just to give you an example, Senator McKell, when he was asked specifically the question by one of the House members on the interim committee, well, what about the single ascending dose study that was conducted by the Food and Drug Administration? And Senator McKell said, "Oh, that was industry funded," and then made a point at the end of his testimony that he had clarified with the representative who had asked the question that in fact it was funded by industry. That is a flat out lie. Now, who gave that information to Senator McKell? Shame on them, because it undermined his credibility, and I hope the credibility of the source of that information that Senator McKell relied upon, because I don't think he's a dishonest person. I think he just was drawn into the debate and given bad information. And that's where we are fighting that battle today in Utah. And there's one example after another of that kind of issue that was going on in Utah. So big battle there. We're gearing up for it. It is the first state that passed the KCPA, and Senator McKell wants to obviously repeal that. So we're going to be locked and loaded in order to fight that battle with the truth and accurate information going forward. In Arizona, we have a potential issue here. The AG's office has reached out to us to ask how they can more effectively enforce on the current KCPA, which they, in a meeting that we had with them just under a year ago, admitted that they didn't think that they had the authority. And now they're asking for help from us, which we obviously will provide to help them more effectively regulate and enforce the law, which is, of course, a key component of keeping consumers safe and which we advocate for. State of New Mexico is a significant problem because you have some substance abuse centers, some local district attorneys who are now clamoring to see a kratom ban. And so we're watching this develop, have not yet seen a legislative champion arise, nor any specific legislation, but we'll keep you posted on that. But there certainly is activity at the local district attorney level, some of the county levels in Albuquerque, particularly in moving forward with their health department. So it's an education effort that we're going to undertake. All of you know that we have an ongoing battle in the state of Texas. We're making progress there. We have a study that's being conducted by Texas Tech University on kratom consumers and the beneficial impacts. And we think that will weigh in when it's completed at the third quarter of next year, prior to them coming back into session. So, but still a very keen interest by the Attorney General to effectively enforce the existing Texas law to get rid of 7-OH. In the state of Missouri, we obviously need to pass the KCPA. We did 2 years ago. Governor vetoed it. The Attorney General in the state of Missouri put out an alert on, and unfortunately conflated kratom and 7-OH, but I think her intent was to go after 7-OH and align with the FDA. So we're going to work closely with her on that, and we're looking to set up a meeting in order to have that discussion. Of course, Kansas City plays into that discussion as well. We are going to see similar activities in Kansas and Iowa, hopefully with a strong KCPA. In Tennessee, we have a huge problem because there is a member there who last year passed a resolution calling for either the ban or the regulation of kratom. She has now abandoned the regulation part of it and is claiming that she wants to ban all of these products. And of course, the evidence and data that she's relying upon is completely in the camp of the 7-OH crowd, so products. So we just need to educate and inform along the way there. In the state of Minnesota, the state health department is coming down hard, again, using the food establishment regulations, which is California is doing, and so is Ohio, and so is Michigan. In the state of Michigan, we have a KCPA that's moving through the legislative body. We've negotiated both in Minnesota and in Michigan with language that we think will bring those regulatory agencies into neutrality. And so we'll have to keep you posted as we go forward there. Same is true in Ohio. The Ohio Department of Agriculture takes what I think is an insane position that the only kratom that they think should be sold, and they are limited in their enforcement activity that they are going to only enforce against food establishments, those that have food establishment licenses. And so smoke shops and other kinds of convenience stores are kind of out of that, unless the convenience store actually sells food in the form of like hot dogs or something like that. So kind of a hazy area, but we're working hard on getting that resolved. And we think within the legislation that was proposed, the Department of Agriculture can live with what we're doing and will probably likely be a neutral party there as well. So I think that that's going to be good for us as we go forward. In the state of, I think I've already covered, in Michigan and Minnesota, I've covered those. In Pennsylvania, we have a couple of bills. One is a ban bill and a couple of others that are just trying to regulate kratom. One is only on an age limit. So we're trying to meld those together in order to get a KCPA. It's not perfect language at this point. And so we're working with the sponsor to try to have them scale it to the appropriate regulatory format to assure that consumers have access to safe kratom leaf products going forward. In the state of Virginia, there is a very strong anti-kratom advocate who has launched a campaign, and he is aggressively out talking to legislators. And so this is going to be a problem for us in Virginia. Again, a KCPA state, we need to strengthen it. And so we're trying to monitor that carefully. I've invited this individual to join me in a webinar so we can talk about some of the misconceptions that he has, some of the inaccurate information he's relying upon, that he's being fed. And unfortunately, he's been getting information from an advocate for natural leaf kratom, but who hates extracts. And of course, extracts, if they're properly formulated, using FDA-approved food-grade solvents, there is no problem. And yet they're not making that distinction. So we've got work to do in Virginia. And that's an unforced error, as they say in tennis. But it's one we have to deal with. And it's very unfortunate that that's happening. In North Carolina, we continue to fight the battle there. I think that in the first quarter of 26, we're going to see the impasse that has been created between the House and the Senate, largely on unrelated issues, kind of break, and that we'll be able to get the KCPA that has passed the House unanimously over to the Senate and move it through. In South Carolina, the KCPA that was passed there did at the last minute prior to passage strip out the 7-OH restrictions on the quantifying what a 7-OH product is at that 2% level. And we are now advocating for no greater than 1 milligram per serving, rather, that we're hopeful that we're going to get that reinstituted, and the leadership said that they were misled by the 7-OH people. And now that the FDA has clarified that position, I think we have a clear pathway to resolve that issue in South Carolina. In Florida, of course, the AG put forth his executive order that bans 7-OH. We think that the language could be improved, and we're looking forward to working with the legislature in order to get that done. It's complicated by very strong, generally anti-kratom beliefs that are held by some officials at the Department of Agriculture. And so they're a tough problem for us. There is a misconception among some that the AG's executive order expires in December. It does not. It expires in June. And so the legislature will have ample time in Florida in order to enact whatever legislation they want. And we're working closely with them, the legislative leaders, in order to make sure that they pass the right kind of regulations on kratom. We think that the 400 parts per million is too low, could be adjusted. And I think that there's some appetite to see that happen. And I think that clearly some of the efforts by the 7-OH crowd to undermine what's happening down there will be thwarted just on the facts. And so I think that's, again, still to be worked out, but we'll see. In the state of Georgia, we have an interesting dynamic in what I will characterize as a well-intentioned sponsor of KCPA legislation with whom we have had significant disagreements with about the enforcement side of it. And I'm talking about Representative Townsend. I think his heart's in the right place. He wants to protect consumers. I think he got too close with the trial lawyers who wanted to just have specific provisions in there that would benefit them in their court cases. And he played ball with them. But missed the key component of this, which is to have good enforcement. And I think he recognizes that and is willing to work with us. And I can tell you, you can stand by for additional information about the report that came out of Georgia, where you had 4 or 5 middle school kids that were allegedly hospitalized because a school official said that they had ingested a gummy-like substance, which was kratom. And I think you're going to see when the evidence comes out that was completely untrue. And we have already seen the testing on the substance that was used. Stand by for it. It is almost laughable that conclusion was drawn. And we look forward to hearing an explanation from those school officials of how they could possibly have arrived at a conclusion that the product that was consumed by those kids was in any way a kratom product of any kind, shape, or form, including 7-OH. It was not a kratom product. So stand by for that, because we're looking forward in the next week or so to roll out a response to that based on good scientific evidence and testing data along the way. In the state of Louisiana, we have a remedial step that needs to be made. Representative Valeo made the now infamous statement when asked by a colleague in the course of debating about the ban bill that she was promoting and who had authored on the House side along with Senator Morris over on the Senate side. The representative in the legislature asked, "What's the difference between the kratom that you're trying to ban and synthetic kratom?" And her famous statement was, "There is no such thing as a synthetic kratom product." And the lobbyist who told you that, you need to tell them that Representative Leo, was born at night, but not last night. And she castigated that lobbyist, which was me, telling these legislators that in fact, there was a synthetic. And of course, that was 2 months before the FDA made their announcement that they were banning synthetic 7-OH. And so obviously, the fundamental basis for the passage of that legislation was based on a false premise. And so we're going to go aggressively with the legislature and hopefully get that issue corrected as it goes forward, and provide for appropriate regulatory scheme around natural kratom products and the formulations of them, the labeling restrictions and age restrictions that should be sufficient to convince the legislature that they've hit the sweet spot by banning the 7-OH, which would be consistent with what the FDA is recommending today. And so those are the kinds of activities we had. And I know I've glossed over them quickly, but I'll let you ask specific questions if you have them about specific states. Let me tell you just a couple of other things that we're working on so that you know. All of us know that we're suffering from the heavy regulatory hand of Facebook on being able to express opinions, to make statements about Kratom, and they are closing down those pages. The AKA's page is down, has been for a while, and we believe that that is a fundamental violation of the free speech rights of advocates. And so we're currently embarking on a strong campaign with the Congress to call Meta to task for this kind of area. And by the way, it is almost the hypocrisy of it is astounding because you can go on Facebook and you can find 708 ads up and down the page. They'll take the money, but they won't let people talk about it. And so I think that that's going to be extremely important as we go forward. The federal KCPA has been redrafted. It's with the Legislative Council as we speak. We're working with the FTA to make sure that they understand what we're trying to do, and hopefully we won't see as big a pushback from the FTA in their lobbying operation or their government relations operation with members of Congress. I know that the 708 people are hoping that they're going to be able to thwart any legislation at this point, but I think that the FDA's power behind this and HHS's power with Robert F. Kennedy is really going to be significant as we go forward. And then let me just make a comment about the 708 advocates. And to me, it breaks down into a couple of areas. There are true advocates in the sense of consumers who have used 708. They believe in them. They think that they are much more potent than natural kratom leaf products are in addressing acute and chronic pain and other mental health issues. And you're absolutely right, it does. So much so that it requires either good evidence about the safety profile of it being a natural botanical supplement, which it is not. And because it is not, it then requires some kind of evidence either through what's called a new dietary ingredient notification, which is rigorous in terms of scientific evidence that has to be produced, or probably the best spot is a new drug application. But you don't get to market those products before you get those approvals or you get the registration for the NDIN accepted by the FDA. They can try to dance around it. I know the advocates are well-intentioned. They're, in some cases, horribly mean because they just like to castigate anyone who disagrees with them. And by the way, there's some on our side that do the same thing. I'm not saying it's exclusively to the 708, but I think the greater proportion of them are the 708 crowd. They resent the fact that that we're advocating for restrictions, severe restrictions, including bans on 708 because they have failed to meet the basic standards. And they try to flip the argument completely to us and say, well, you didn't have it either. And I've described how ridiculous that is. In fact, there is plenty of scientific evidence to justify market entry of natural kratom leaf products and extracts that are wholly justified, where the 708 people are blowing in the wind. Now, separately, the 708 manufacturers, it's a far different situation. And you can just point to one important thing: the distinction between a recommendation for scheduling to the Drug Enforcement Administration, which, as I say, I'm hopeful is going to be announced within days or weeks, certainly hopefully before the first of the year, and the enforcement authority that is held by the FDA to go after dangerous substances. And the evidence of the FDA committed to that strategy is found in their seizure of products that were found in a Kansas City location by CBD Sharma, where they seized a significant amount of product. And even when that was done, and by the way, it is a civil action, the seizure's in place, they are quarantined products, the excuse me, the manufacturer has now is continued manufacturing, and he's thumbing his nose at the FDA. And I think that will probably get a bad result for him. But he made the commitment that doesn't matter. This is too important to him, and he's going to continue it. And I think he'll reap the penalty for that shortly, because it doesn't meet the standard that was required under federal law for market entry, or he wouldn't be in this situation right now. And I think that's a critically important distinction. Many of you may have seen the report in Florida of 92,000 pounds, I think the report was, of 7-OH that was seized. That is inaccurate in the sense that it wasn't 7-OH, but it was the uh, crumbs or the extracted raw material that was on its way to be produced to 7-OH. Of course, that they were actually seizing, but it evidences the commitment there of the Attorney General and law enforcement agencies to take swift and strong action in order to protect it. And all of this is designed to protect consumers. And as much as the 7-OH advocates would like to say, oh, we're not selling in packaging attractive to children, guess what? You are. We're not selling in anything that is designed to be used by someone as a drug. Yes, you are. Your claims are all associated with that. And very few people say, oh, I'm just taking it because I would like to have a little energy boost in the morning, like a replacement for a cup of coffee. I just want to feel a little better. That's not what 7-OH delivers. It's not what they're advocating for, and it's not what even the advocates are touting. And so I think that the pathway for 7-OH is clear. It is a self-inflicted wound on them because they're clearly an option if they would follow it, take products off the market, do the science, come back on in whatever form that you can justify with the science. So with that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to turn it over and we'll start through the questions as we go through these. And I may have answered some of these questions as we've done this, but let me go through and see. Ken asked any news on the 7-OH scheduling. I think I've answered that. We're hopeful that any day now you're going to see the DEA make their announcement. And of course, that'll be great when they do. Stephen asked, can you elaborate on the FDA not being interested in botanical kratom? What Commissioner McCary said is we are not focused on natural leaf kratom. I don't think that the FDA is taking away its interest in natural leaf kratom products, but based on the single ascending dose study, which incredibly the 7-OH people were saying, oh, well, that didn't really mean much at all. It was a human safety study. It was designed to determine whether or not, depending on the serving size of the kratom that was consumed by a human subject, would induce a serious adverse event, which the FDA expected to occur at somewhere around 6 to 8 grams in that 5-minute period, which was the study protocol. They got to 12 grams, saw no serious side effect or serious event, and they saw any nausea, which both this placebo cohort did. For anyone to say with a straight face that that wasn't a qualified human safety study does not know what they're talking about. They should be called out for it. And any of these purported PhDs that are claiming that nonsense need to be stripped of their PhD in our discussions with them because they haven't earned it. And I'm strong about that because they're misleading people, they're misleading public policy officials, they're misleading consumers, and they're exposing those consumers, in my opinion, to significant risk. So Stephen goes on to say, does that mean that it isn't in, I'm sorry, I can't read all the way. Let me see if I can adjust the size of my screen so I can capture some of this. Doesn't look like I can. Anyway, I think it says that the information isn't in the submission of the DEA for natural leaf kratom products. It is not. They're not in any way focused on natural leaf products. And it doesn't mean that the FDA is going to accept or tolerate the botanical product instead of a dietary supplement. Still going to be interest by the FDA, still going to be a requirement that we follow the protocols for the DSHEA Act, but federal KCPAs can help clarify that. So I think that'll help clarify that particular issue. Next question is from Adam. And Adam's asking, are you saying kratom was removed from the ordinance? Well, what we're hearing in Kansas City is that going forward, they are going to revise the ordinance. We don't know officially what that says, but the thing that drew attention to various members of the council was their question about whether or not they should only be approaching 7-OH and what we'll call intoxicating hemp products and other more potent products that the mayor was going after. So that's the situation there. And I think that there will be a revised ordinance. I think that we're going to be really putting the heat on with our advocates to continue the pressure to educate the members of the council. So I think that'll be great. I've already told you what's happening with Facebook. I've told you that we're working with the FDA on it. and I've talked about the overseas organics and whether in Florida and the seizure. Of course, every one of these stories affects us because it gets replicated and they call it kratom. But I think that it helps to, in the end, to help us to go back to those reporters, and we have a very active campaign to do that, to differentiate between 7-OH and kratom. So in that sense, it has the perverse outcome rather, of separating and educating these public policy officials. Can't ask anything new in Michigan. We're negotiating hard with a task force that has been created. We're in the middle of that. I think we're doing well with the discussions. There's a better understanding by these regulators about the difference between natural kratom leaf products and 7-OH. So I think we're going to have some good news to report shortly. Adam says, will there be any language regarding 7-OH in the federal KCPA? Yes, it will be the requirements that we have in state KCPAs at the no greater than 2%, which has been endorsed by the FDA. And we're going to add a provision of no greater than 1 milligram. That'll be in the federal KCPA. And we're hopeful that we can have that. The Legislative Council was, just slammed with writing all this last minute legislation as Congress tries to fix the current budgetary issue. But hopefully by the end of the month, and then we'll get this thing filed and start really moving on it in early February. If there is a 7-OH ban, do you think that they will come out with a similar product? Absolutely. They've already said it. They're not interested in the science. They're interested in making a buck. And absolutely, you're going to see pseudodoxils and MGM 15s and 16s or something else. And we're going to have to stand right there and quantify them as synthetic products. And hopefully we find the scope of the regulations that embrace those. But I don't think the market entry for a follow-on product is going to be as great, because what happened in 2023 is the 7-OH came on and everybody says, oh, this is just another kratom product. And this is just a little bit stronger. It's far different from that. It's not a kratom product, and it isn't just a little stronger. It's a lot stronger. And it really was dangerous. So I think that that's the case where we are now. The bans will, in some states, cover the copycat, synthetics. So we're gonna hopefully include as much of that embracing language as possible as we go forward. Deborah asked, I was told the Kratom Valley red vein capsules are illegal in the state of Connecticut. Is this accurate? I've not heard that. I will check into it. I don't think that's the case. I know that there is a ban that was enacted by the legislature, subject to a review and a publication of a rule by the Department of Consumer Protection in Connecticut. But there's no regulation on kratom currently in place in Connecticut. So it would surprise me if there's any specific kratom product that is being designated as being illegal. But I will check on Deborah to find out. Ethan asked if he's a small business owner. Has never sold 7-OH. We've been respectfully selling kratom for 15 years in Herbal Shop. We were raided by the California Department of Public Health 2 weeks ago, and they've embargoed all of our kratom products. They want to destroy all of our products we have on site, which is about 30 grand. We're hoping to get information on how to get consumers in the fight. We're there. You need to reach out to Stephanie Taylor at AmericanKratom.org. Give her your information, and we can reach out and we can collaborate with you on how we're dealing with the Department of Public Health there in California. Tough problem, and it's just one of those things. Misty points out that the Tennessee rep is connected with the Kratom Danger Awareness Group. Not surprising. They are going to do everything they can. They're denying the reality. I saw a couple of posts in the last couple of days where the ADA people are mocking us because we're relying on such poor evidence to document that Matt Wetherington spent $1 million. We have a social media post on the KDA webpage on their posting saying that he was going to stroke $1 million check. Damn my lying eyes. And I saw it. And they're saying, well, you never can prove it. Well, no, we can't prove it. They should disclose whether or not they did or did not and document it to say it. They criticize us for saying that Matt Wetherington contributed money to the $400,000 effort by the Tampa Bay Times. He said he did. And he mocked us for criticizing him for doing it because we were talking about other people on in terms of who paid for science. I mean, sorry, my lying eyes. If it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It's a duck, and unfortunately, that's what they've now going to through in order to try to push back on what is obviously a huge problem for them as they try to justify it. But the KDA is going to try in every jurisdiction they can to peddle their nonsense, and I call it nonsense because they are extremists. They're none of us want to in any way denigrate a family that's lost a loved one, but it ought to be based on the truth, not upon the hyperbole, not upon a trumped up case being made by trial attorneys who have a financial interest, not but based on substance abuse clinics that have a financial interest in converting a kratom consumer into a kratom use disorder and make money off of it. It's really interesting to hear and see some of these reactions that are just bizarre as they go forward. Ken asks, why do you believe the 400 parts per million is too low for Florida when all of my different leafs tested 14 parts per million or less? Even the extracts come in below 14 parts per million or don't understand why the limit should be over 400 parts per million. Well, good question. The 400 parts per million is infinitesimally small. 800 parts per million would be infinitesimally small. There is an issue about transporting raw materials into Florida to a site for processing into finished products where those levels would be exceeded. And either there's got to be a carve out for them or the level's got to be a little higher. I also have a report from, and by the way, it adds by dry weight, which adds another denominator to this, which is difficult. And so, Ken, we can talk about this in more detail, but one of the scientific letters that I got was that by dry weight creates real problems for some of the tinctures in kratom because the way that they remove the moisture and what they end up with is problematic depending on the methodology that's used. So that's why I think there needs to be a little room that's there. We can live with the 400 parts per million, but it's not the right standard. That's what I'm saying. Noor asked, how long will it be before we can start selling natural kratom products in Florida? I'm hoping the legislature moves quick now that they know that the 70H nonsense was a ruse and we can get there. We are pushing hard on that and we'll keep you posted, obviously, but we want that to happen as quickly as possible. Nick says, any update on peeling Wisconsin? My fault for the delay. We've been tinkering with language back and forth, and we just don't have it right yet, but we are going to get it right. And I'm going to make another round with the attorneys to get this done. Heidi asked, did I miss the Illinois update? I did miss it. Thank you, Heidi. We're working now with the various advocacy groups, the GKC and the Botanics for Better Health and Wellness. We've agreed upon a legislative package. We have a red line version of the Illinois bill. We are going to consolidate the bills that are there and join the sponsors together. And I think we're going to make real progress in Illinois. That was a tough issue there, but thankfully we have a real cooperative agreement that's working with the GKC and the Botanics for Better Health and Wellness going forward. And thank you to them for their willingness to work with us and compromise. We're all compromising in that state and on that issue, but it's working out to be a good partnership. Tracy asked, in New York, the labor requirements bill was just sent to the governor. Were we able to rework the bill beforehand? No, but the governor has some authority that she can change the bill. We have a great lobbying team there. We're working with it. There are 4 bills, I think, at least 3, that are on the governor's desk, and we're trying to work through all of those. So we will continue to work on it as we go forward. And that's, again, something to stay tuned on because we'll do another state update here before the end of the year. Chelsea asked, any new state bans last month? No. The ones that are being threatened are really boards of pharmacy. We did have the threat of legislation to ban or just people chirping, but we don't have any that are in effect. Connecticut did hold their hearing, and we have not yet heard the decision, which we expect to be that they're going to recommend a ban, but we're going to work with the legislature to correct that because the Department of Consumer Protection doesn't have much latitude to change that. So, and even though the hearing was fabulous, overwhelmingly educational and supportive of making the distinction between 7-OH and natural kratom leaf products, I think the department feels like they're pretty much constrained. So we're working on that. Kamai says, as a business, we need the best way to stay updated on regulatory changes and new legislation across all regions. Do you have a system or solution that can help us track or monitor these updates effectively? I don't know that we can say that it's an effective system. I will take this up with our team, and maybe we can have a posting on our website that is more up to date on this. It's a good suggestion. It's resource driven. We are now in over 30 some states where we're hiring lobbyists, working with those lobbyists, working with legislators. And I can tell you it's 12 to 14-hour days trying to work on these right now. But this is a good suggestion for a small business owner. And let's see what we can do to help. Bobby asked, can you touch on the 708 that's going on around the country, especially like the one that just took place in Florida? I think I've already talked about that. It was not 708, but it is the material used for 708. I think the AG's office has taken the right steps, and I think it should and effectively will have a chilling effect. There is a legal challenge that has been filed by the 708 industry against the enforcement action and the AG's executive order. I think those will be dispensed with rather quickly as we go forward here. What we struggle with is that we have an education problem, and we've got to get over as best we can the distinction between these substances, how they are formulated, how one's natural, one's synthetic. And once we get there, I think we'll have a better runway to move forward here. What was terrible about the story in Florida was, as everyone knows, that it included a lot of weapons and incendiary devices. None of that's a good look. And it was somehow associated with kratom, but that's not what it was. And so, again, education campaign, we're going to continue to keep working on that and pushing for law enforcement to take appropriate action where they can, and making sure the distinction is separate from that. Same issues I mentioned earlier in Georgia with the so-called kratom overdoses by 4 to 5 middle school kids. It just wasn't true. And yet the media treated it like it's true. So there's going to be a day of accounting all the way around on that. Benjamin asked about Connecticut. I think I've already described that. We've got to get through the actual recommendation by the Department of Consumer Protection. The governor has to ratify it, which we believe he will, to schedule kratom. And then we go to the legislature, which starts in January, and we'll have the chance to actually correct that. It's going to be one of those things where we're going to need a lot of advocate help in Connecticut in order to educate the legislators there about why they needed to fix what was done at the last minute without any good justification along the way. Michael asked, I noticed the longtime vendor's description of powdery kratom shows 1.73% metrology content. Should I be alarmed? Is that within the appropriate range? Any update on Illinois? I think I've answered Illinois. I can tell you that the product formulations that vary are a requirement for the manufacturer is to specifically have a reasonable basis for safety under the conditions of use. So you could have a higher MIT content in a product that has a lower serving size or a justification for that level. We're seeing better or higher levels of MIT content, better levels of MIT content coming out of Thailand as opposed to Indonesia. And Indonesia was at one point at 1.6 to 1.8 in some fashion. Now they've started to tier their qualitative standards for paying more for the higher level MIT. And I think that Thailand's a little ahead of Indonesia in terms of controlling that. But I don't think that's the problem, Michael, with the 1.73 mitragynine, but we'll watch it. Obviously, we don't want it to get into an area where its finished product has too high a level of MIT that would be problematic for us. Let's see. Chris asked if we're going to be on site in Tennessee when the General Assembly goes back into session. You bet we are. We'll have a lobbyist in place, and we are recruiting right now the lobbyist that's going to help us. We haven't arrived at the decision yet. We're negotiating. They're expensive, and some of that we have to take the hit. Some of it we can't, and so we have to go find someone else. Some of these lobbyists are extraordinarily expensive because they're sort of exploiting the market, but we'll do the best we can. Brandon asks, can you expand on what's going on in Washington State? The Department of Pharmacy, the Board of Pharmacy rather, has stood down waiting for legislation, but they're getting itchy about moving forward. And so we want the bill to be pre-filed. We have a sponsor who is well regarded. We're in tough negotiations about the method by which Kratom will be available in the form uh, at a store. And so some tough negotiations going on right now, but hopefully we'll resolve that here in the next week or so as we go forward. Misty says it still be continued on what's inside those Florida boxes. I agree with you, but I don't think it was 7OH. I think if you had 92,000 pounds of 7OH, you have a very huge amount of money tied up there. I think it was raw material that was on its way to be manufactured in 7OH. That's my opinion. Drew says, is there any direct source for packaging label requirements for Kratom products? It really is contingent on what your reasonable basis for safety is and what your product formulation is and how you design your serving sizes. And you're well advised to talk to your regulatory counsel about that. If you need a referral or someone that understands and has experience in that area from in terms of regulatory counsel, just reach out to us and we can help you with a couple of recommendations. I think you always need to scale it to the product formulation you have. Erica says, I didn't catch what you said about the mayor in Kansas City. Are they still holding the meeting for potential ban? Sorry if it's annoying. It's not annoying. Our understanding is that they are hunting on the ordinance that would impact Kratom, and that there are different reports that could happen next week or it could be punted until January. We think that they're going to have a little more time in order to evaluate the amendments that we have recommended and others are kicking in now. So I think that we're off the hook for tomorrow, but we were told by the clerk that the board has the authority, the committee has the authority right up until the start of the hearing to either add or remove something from the agenda. So we're always at risk. We have on site there tonight, Bob Durkin, former FDA official, and currently a attorney that consults with us on regulatory affairs. Jack Henningfield is there. Laura Romney's there. Some other advocates are there, and people are on standby in order to testify remotely. So we're doing the best we can in there. Nick asked is there a pending KCPA? There will be refiled. It did pass the House unanimously. We got hung up in the Senate because of 7OH issue, confusion generated by the 7OH people. That's now gone. That the FDA, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Dr. McCary have straightened that out. If the FDA changes their statement regarding Kratom, will that stop the CDPH from seizing natural Kratom products? We hope so. We think it clearly will if they're relying upon the FDA's language for justification for it. And so they'll have to at least rethink it, if not abandon it. And certainly the KCPA will change that for them as we go forward. I've spoken to some of the representatives and assembly people in California, and they're ticked off at what the Department of Public Health is doing. There is a great letter that was authored by the former director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, Dr. Gupta, and a fabulous letter. And I think that set them back on their heels. Let's see. Shane asked, any updates in Massachusetts? Seem like a bunch of maverick municipalities. Not absolutely true. Very difficult to navigate all of them. We're trying our best. Springfield's the latest of them. We've just got to push through the state level language so that it pops the bubble in all these local jurisdictions, because that's been the strategy that they have taken from the KDA standpoint. And we've just got to fight back. And that relies upon all of our advocates to jump in and help us as best we can. Mark says, so is Texas not going to do anything on 7OH until next session in 27? They can't. There can be enforcement by the local district attorneys and the AG on 7OH because the 2% limit is in there. And so I think you'll see that, and that may stem the tide on some of this. Jan asked about Massachusetts. I just answered that. Ann says, has the FDA made modification to the website to clarify inconsistencies about Kratom? Not yet. We're working with them. Hopefully, before the first of the year. They'll do that. We're making good progress. And I'm more optimistic than I've ever been that they will make changes on it. Drew asked, what provision is no greater than 1 milligram, specifically the mitragynine level? Okay, I'm going to assume in good faith that you're asking that straight up. In order to have a reasonable basis for safety, if you look at what Commissioner McCary properly characterized 7OH levels as being trace amounts, no greater than 2%, you cannot generate a 7OH product from naturally occurring levels, trace amounts of 7OH, and it would never exceed 1 milligram. That's the level. And that's the reason that we put that in there. You could have metrogeny levels vary in that product, but as long as the 7OH doesn't exceed the 1 milligram per serving, then that's the limit on what the naturally occurring levels would be. I hope that clarifies your question. John asked, FDA has never recognized kratom as a lawful dietary ingredient. Only NDI submission ever attempted was rejected. Actually, John, there have been 7, I think, maybe 8 NDIs, and they were rejected for technical reasons. And there is an argument to be made that even though the FDA doesn't accept the NDI, there still is a market entry pathway if there is the belief based on good data that the FDA would have to challenge on what's called a de novo basis. So I don't think it's completely accurate to say that despite the NDIs not being registered by the FDA, that doesn't mean that they're blocked from the market. And then it goes on to say, mitragynine extracts have never been submitted, have never submitted one. John, I'm just going to tell you, you don't know what you're talking about. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but if you just look at the NDI information that's available on the FDA website, you would know that what you said isn't true. There have been extracts that have been submitted for NDIs. There have been human clinical trials done on some of these products. So there's an effort, at least within the kratom industry, to do this. So anyway, you want to say, so neither category has the NDI status. You say they have and keep demanding from 7OH. So here you go. Why is 7OH being singled out by the AK when the same standard has never been applied to mitragynine extracts or kratom leaf? Nonsense. Nonsense, nonsense. And John, you can argue till the cows come home. You answer this question for me, and I'll give you the time right now. You tell me why the chief science officer from the Heart Group stood before a group of people and said there's not been a single piece of scientific evidence to document the safety of a 7OH product that had been developed prior to market entry nor since market entry. It just isn't true. And you can advocate all day long that you want for 7OH, but what you can't do is make up your own facts, because what you're saying is simply not true. And anyone who looks at the history of kratom market entry in the United States knows that kratom was exported into the United States just after the Vietnam War. It percolated along and grew in terms of consumer activity through the mid-1990s. Then the smoke shops got involved in it. Some creative entrepreneurs started tweaking it. That got on the radar of the DEA and the FDA, culminating in a kratom product called Krypton that was adulterated with O-desmethyl tramadol that led to the deaths of 9 people in a 12-month period, which appropriately got the attention of every public health official in the world, including the FDA. And they, to this day, at least until a year ago, were touting those deaths as though they were kratom deaths. And there was a peer-reviewed published article published by it's called the Kronstadt Report that found that it was lethal doses of O-desmethyl tramadol, which is a compound used in the production of a very lethal chemical that it can only be prescribed. So you can talk all day long to me about, oh, it's the same thing, and you are equivocating, you are misleading people, and you are the purveyor of misinformation, and that's the bottom line. And you email me, and you tell me, you show me what science you have, and then we'll do a webinar, and I'll be glad to invite you on, and you stand toe-to-toe and give me the information that contradicts what I've just said. The National Institute on Drug Abuse has funded hundreds of peer-reviewed articles prior to 2016. Now it's many hundreds, over $100 million of research money put into it. And if you want to ask what the status of a kratom product entering the marketplace today based on a reasonable basis of safety by a manufacturer, there you have it. Government-funded studies. and you tell me what scientific basis one single 7OH manufacturer had prior to September 2023 to go on the market, and there wasn't one. And you don't take my word for it. You take Mr. Kampmeyer's word for it, Dr. Kampmeyer's word for it, because he ratted you guys out. So, John, I'm looking forward to your email saying, oh, I have all of the evidence. And don't equivocate. Don't say, oh, it's the same as, because it's not the same as. Show me your scientific evidence and we'll have the webinar. Love to hear it. And you come on and do it. And I hope you accept that challenge, because I've heard enough of the lies being told, in my opinion, by the 7OH people to mislead public health officials, to mislead consumers, putting consumers in danger, in my opinion, because they just want to have a buck made in the marketplace. And you justify it, you tell me, and I'm all for it. So fire away. Ethan, he says, I'm a small business owner in California, never sold 7OH with the AKA, and in line with the AKA. We've been respectfully selling. You described this, that you were rated, and I think I've already answered that. We reach out to us. We're going to help you with this along the fight. And Ethan wants to know how we're going to move the bill through the state Senate. As I said, the state Senate got misled by the 7OH crowd about how safe they were, and that balloon got popped by Robert F. Kennedy and Commissioner McCary. Brian says, what do you know about the legal issues of potential ban on the liquid OPMS black products? The chain I buy Kratom from is no longer selling any OPMS products as a result. My understanding is that OPMS has challenged the FDA. There's a lawsuit that's been filed. The FDA has not taken any legal action to remove OPMS products from the marketplace, not even OPMS black. They just put out a consumer alert, which we understand was really the report that was made by a trial attorney, and they singled out OPMS. And I think the FDA overreacted, because obviously they haven't defended themselves on this issue, and certainly have not issued any kind of administrative action or regulatory action against OPMS products. We'll see, but I think the FDA moved too quickly. Adam says, any news from Massachusetts? I hear the anti-Kratom people are well organized. They are, and we need to fight back. We need to get better organized ourselves as we go forward. Nora asked, I'm a business owner and got my natural Kratom products seized by CDPH. Again, email Stephanie Taylor at americankratom.org. We'll try to help you on this. When is Missouri going to try to ban the 7OH in the upcoming legislative session? I think you'll see that action being taken place. Misty Brown says KD as a pharmacist who's initiating the Board of Pharmacy hearings. And you're right, Misty. It is a pharmacist out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. She has lost at the Virginia Board of Pharmacy and at the Washington State Board of Pharmacy. And I suspect she's behind some of these others. She's not winning because of one fundamental fact. The science doesn't support it. So we're going to continue to fight there. But thank you for pointing that out. Nick says, Oklahoma State has passed out a cease and desist order for stores selling Kratom products containing alcohol. Sheriff referred to OPMS products which use alcohol as an extraction. Do you know anything about this? I've heard some of the early stories about this. This is, if there is an example of market competition that is a turf war, which the 7OH people like to say is the real reason why we're so hard on 7OH, which is nonsense. But I think this truly is part of a turf war. There are some companies that are trying to remove products that are competitors to them in the Kratom space. Shame on them. And they ought to just bring it out, make it public, and let's have that forum rather than trying to actually go behind the scenes and do this kind of skullduggery. But that's just the way it is. Linda says, if Kratom isn't allowed to be sold in California, can people still order it out of state without getting in trouble? I think that this is an unresolved question at this point. There is sporadic enforcement in California. We're being told that unless there are complaints filed, that the Department of Public Health likely isn't going to do much about it until the legislation goes through. So we're going to continue to work on that, and hopefully we can keep them at bay. But right now, I don't know. I'm not aware of any restrictions on people buying Kratom from out-of-state sources. Certainly isn't any enforcement action that I'm aware of that's been done. Be careful, follow the law. That's all I can tell you. There is no law in California. There's only a regulatory interpretation of what the federal law authorizes the Department of Public Health in California to do. And that's a convoluted way of saying that I don't think they're in good legal standing. We'll see how that works out. Lisa asked, do you think Missouri will ban 7OH? I've already answered that. And what is the milligram now in 7-OH? Well, you can buy products, and I heard a 7-OH advocate say, "Oh, well, you can buy the products, but they're scored 4 ways, so you can break it once and then break it again, and that's what it's done." Well, why not formulate it that way? Why do you make it into one? We all know the answer to that. We're not stupid, and yet they expect us as consumers to be stupid. But that's the way it is. But right now, I think you see milligram levels that are extremely high, and their own scientists said there's not even a justification for 1 milligram, let alone 7.5 or 15 or 40 or 60 or 80 or 120. It just doesn't make any sense. Eric asked, how is Missouri feeling about regulation? Is it possible to answer that? Uh, the Department of Health in Missouri was the one who recommended to the governor at the time, he's since gone, to veto the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. And the governor did it. And we have been in discussions with the Department of Health, and they have recommended some language that would put them in a neutral position. We think that language will be in the new KCPA in Missouri. We hope that they'll actually move forward with that bill, and the governor will sign it. And then we'll have a regulation on 7-OH there. Misty correctly points out that this is a Kratom webinar, not a 7-OH webinar. But I think I've answered it. I feel strongly about this because as well-intentioned as I'll assume the individual was that raised this question, it doesn't make them right. And what's happening is that this narrative that is inaccurate, it is unfair, it is completely ridiculous, needs to be addressed. And that's why I was as firm as I was about it. I see some people raising their hand, but I'll get to you in just a second. Shane says there was a MD White that presented in Springfield, Massachusetts. He's a doctor out of Connecticut, a great advocate, good authority, and I'm sure he's going to be available. Lots of these. Adam says, any imported container seizures in California, the AK is aware of. None that I'm aware of. Not that they won't happen, but the FDA really isn't taking a hard posture on this right now anyway. It's just sporadically being done. Linda says, are we supporting extract products? I'm confused. Linda, go and look at the state KCPAs, and what we say is that an extract product of a natural leaf kratom product is only valid if it doesn't use an extract solvent that is greater than a food grade solvent approved by the FDA, because you cannot achieve the power of the alkaloid concentration that comes with some of these very powerful solvents. So yes, we support consumer access to safely formulated kratom products, including extracts that use food grade solvents that limit the potency power of that. So I hope that clears up your confusion. Ethan, last question. Is it possible to put in touch with the other small businesses owner in California who had products seized by the Department of Public Health? Great question. Email Stephanie Taylor, I'm loading her up, at americankratom.org, and let's ask that question, and let's see if we can come up with some way to put everybody together. Adam said, I met the Department of Health in California. Got it. So let me go to those that have raised their hand, and let me see if I can figure out how to identify who those people are. Mark, you may need to help me. Let me go back and see. Oh, they should have come up to the top of the attendees list. So Lisa, you have raised your hand, and I'm going to allow you to talk, and you have the floor. You have to unmute yourself.
Hi. I'm out in California, and I've just been kind of listening. I happened upon your channel. I found Claudia on Facebook, and I really thank you for that. My son we've had a lot of abuse in our family from the kind of forced medication and not letting you have medication, and people are just really in Sacramento just wanting to lock everybody up and force medicate them. I'm gonna propose that they at least have an icon saying it's a locked facility, but I don't see how has anybody ever, and I guess this is off subject, but has anybody ever submitted anything to like city council members, like you better, watch out for liability if you force medicate these people, then you won't you're going to have problems down the road when you have to pay for their dental care.
Yeah, Lisa, that's a very interesting point. I've never heard anyone articulate the potential liability. I think that government regulatory agencies are pretty much exempt, uh, not completely, but largely.
But
And they
that's
do
going to
that for the,
change because
yeah,
they
yeah.
cannot keep. All my teeth broke when my doctor prescribed me medication I thought was safe. I was never informed that that might be an issue. And okay, so they got one over on me. I wasn't able to sue them that time, but it doesn't mean we can't change it here going out. We could require the FDA to have insurance if they are going to force medicate these things on people. But
I'm willing to look
course,
at this. Very interesting point, and we can talk about it with our regulatory lawyers and see what they think of it. But it's a very interesting point. I assume you were talking about Claudia Morandi.
Yes, I was.
She's a fabulous person. We don't agree 100% on everything, but I'll tell you what, she's a fabulous person. And I
Okay,
hope
so
she
you're
hears
not
this.
with her there. Okay.
No, no.
I saw her on Facebook and then I started attending. I am actually currently studying all these different cases and stuff in Pacer in Sacramento. And a lot of the, people who are perpetuating these Senate bills that are dangerous are actually definitely taking money illegally from the drug companies through
I,
usually the
I,
nose, no.
I understand. You raised a great point. We're going to take it up with our
But there,
regulatory attorneys.
okay. And then is there a way I could contact you in the future? Because I am going to be setting up a curriculum talking about and I use the kratom for my pain. I'm not going to use anything else. And so I didn't even know it might not be allowed. And it's ridiculous. The only purpose for that is for the pharmaceutical companies to make us miserable and make money. That's it.
Amen. So again, I'm
Ridiculous.
going to dump it on Stephanie because I get hundreds and hundreds of emails every day, and I can't promise you I'll get back to you in a
Okay.
timely way. But Stephanie Taylor at AmericanKratom.org. Lisa, thank you very much for
Stephanie
your
Taylor.
comment.
Okay.
We're going to, yep, at AmericanKratom.org. Thank you. I don't
Okay.
see anyone else with a hand up. If anyone wants to put their hand up and make a comment, they are welcome to do so. Anyone? I saw that John Van Open had his hand up. Let's see. Oh, here he's got it. Okay. John, I'm going to allow you to talk. You have the floor.
Good to see you, Mac.
Thank you.
I see you're traveling again.
My wife likes to tell people that I live in the nearest Marriott. So I am traveling again.
I recall you being a Marriott envoy person, yes.
Right.
As am I, so guilty by association for sure. I just want to make clear your continued activities, your continued efforts do not go unnoticed. And while we all get this long journey of kratom is continuing, it's the right fight, it's the right spot. We've been true to form from the beginning. We've always kept public safety first, and you've been the champion of that.
Well, you're very kind. I have told people, I've confessed to people before that when I first was recruited and asked to join this effort in 2016, I believed that it was going to be a 4-month gig for me because I told Susan Ash, whom I have immense respect for, I told Susan, you have no chance. The DA has never withdrawn a temporary scheduling order because there's a 2-month cure period or 2-year cure period. And she still was persistent, said, we still need you. And so I took it on, and here I am almost a decade later, and more energetic about it, more passionate about it as a now kratom consumer. I was telling people a story, by the way, on another call that I think is worth sharing with people. There are people who were a part of that effort in 2016, and there was an enormous number of people and magnificent people who came to Washington or who organized a lot of rallies and that kind of thing. And the result of those efforts were we had 51 members of Congress in a very compressed time period, 26 Republicans, 25 Democrats. So it was very bipartisan, telling the FDA not to schedule kratom. And there were 13 senators in two separate letters that sent an equal letter. And all of those, I'm sure, along with the 6,000 plus calls that were made to the DEA offices, which they told me about later, all had an impact. But I was sitting in Senator Orrin Hatch's office going over a list of senators that I was asking him to personally call in order to get them to sign on to the letter so we would have more than the 13. And he was going through, as I was methodically giving him my recommendations and justifying why I would do that, why I would recommend that. He said, I remember him putting his pen down. I said, why don't I just call the DA administrator myself? And so he asked his assistant to call the administrator. And of course, the administrator picked up the call right away.
Acting administrator at the time,
Acting
to be
administrator
honest.
Rosenthal, yeah.
Yes.
And I was the fly on the wall to hear that conversation. And what Senator Hatch said to him, he explained to him that he was a kratom consumer himself, that there were millions of kratom consumers in the United States who were safely and responsibly using kratom, that the FDA had concocted the same kind of evidence and data that they had used against dietary supplements for decades, that forced him to pass to sponsor and then get passed the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. And I remember the closing argument. He said, "You will not ban kratom because I will rain hell on your head if you do." And there was a response, and then Hatch hung up, and he said, "We're done. Don't worry about any more signatures." So, success has many fathers, and defeat is an
Amen.
orphan. But Orrin Hatch, I think, turned the table right then in that call. And what a magnificent kind of message that he delivered. And of course, when Dr. Zawa did it again in 2018, he did it a little different way. But we've been the beneficiaries of one thing, and that is that the passion of this community to protect natural kratom leaf products has borne real fruit. So thank you for your kind words, but I can tell you that it was Orrin Hatch, and it was a lot of other people that I've been privileged to stand shoulder to shoulder with, including you, as we've fought this battle. So very kind of you to say those things.
Very easy to note facts in history. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me go to Michael. Michael, you're next up.
I unmuted myself. Okay. Yeah, I just have a question, and you don't have to answer or not, or because I've been seeing a lot of stuff on TV and just in general in the media about feel free. And my question is, I've been trying to study. I'm wondering, is it plain leaf product, or is it concentrated extract, or I just see so much about it. It's hard for me to believe that it's a powder, a plain leaf product.
So my recommendation on this is that you contact Botanic Tonics and ask them. Now, one thing that's important to distinguish is that Feel Free is a compound product. It's natural kratom leaf material and kava. And there is a separate category in terms of research with compound products like that. I think there's tremendous amount of research on kratom, which I've articulated. And then I think there's a substantial body of evidence on kava. And I think that the Botanic Tonics people have done a really good job of developing the scientific research needed to justify the combination used in a product. But I think that the best person or the best group to talk to is Botanic Tonics on that issue.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So anyone else that has a final argument or comment they'd like to make? Misty, I'm going to elevate you. Misty, you're on.
What's up, Mac? Can you clarify? Can you clarify again about kratom being a precursor to 708 or not?
Okay, so thank you for asking this question, because I saw an interesting thing that was said on one of the pro 7-OH posts, and that was that that 7-OH is an alkaloid, a naturally occurring alkaloid in the plant. And then when I kicked back at that, I was told that the FDA says it's an alkaloid. And I went and looked, and I think it's sloppy language, but there is a reference to 7-OH being an alkaloid. But here's the truth of the matter. There has been no scientific evidence that documents the presence of 7-hydroxynitrogenine in the kratom plant itself. The only time that 7-OH occurs is when the leaves are harvested and there's a natural degradation that starts through an oxidation procedure or process, I'm sorry, that creates 7-OH. And when the leaves are laid out on a drying bed and exposed to heat, it accelerates that oxidization process. That is a necessary process or procedure for the leaves to be then crumbled. And actually the harvesters take these dried leaves with their fingers and they just crumble them. And then those crumbs are put into bags and shipped off to a processing plant where they're put into powder. Throughout that process, there will continue to be a degradation of nitrogenine into 7-hydroxynitrogenine, and that will continue, obviously not with the heat component, until the product is manufactured into a finished product. Now, extracts remove it entirely, but at the end of that process, and even in products that have been finished for a year or two on their shelf life, there has not been a level of 7-OH that has been detected that is quantifiable, or with very sophisticated testing, they can get to a 0.03 or 0.05 at the most. So you will never see naturally occurring 7-OH, whether you want to classify it as an alkaloid, which it's technically not. It's not a naturally occurring alkaloid in the kratom plant. It is a compound that's created as a metabolite after the drying, after the harvesting. And so when I hear the 7-OH people say, oh, well, it's the same thing. All we're doing, and literally they take the example, it's the same thing if you had 28 oranges and you're going to do a vitamin C cap. And they say all we're doing. No, the vitamin C in those 28 oranges is greater than what's in that vitamin C cap at the end. But 7-OH, if you take kratom, raw leaf material, there's so little 7-OH, the only way that you can increase the amount of 7-OH is to use a catalyst, a chemical catalyst. And I got criticized for saying that it was pool shock chemicals. There was a person, there was a gas that I would say something so outlandish, so outrageous, so scientifically unsupported. It was Vince Sanders who said it, not me. He's the one that said it on a public social media post, that they use chlorine similar to the chemical shock pool chemical that you use to shock your backyard pool to make 7-OH. I didn't say it. The primary manufacturer of it did. And all these people that are thrashing around and you know, wailing away and writhing in their hands about, oh, Cato said that somehow 7-OH is not a naturally occurring alkaloid. Vince Sanders said that it's catalyzed by outside chemicals. That's what makes it into a very dangerous product. You can't get to that concentration. So when you look at a 7-OH product, the testing that's been done, there were 300, I believe it was 40 products by the University of Florida of commercially available kratom products that were tested by them, and none, and this was 2 years ago, I think, none had a level of 7-OH was detectable. Not one. Now today, you can take let's say you picked up a Champ Show, 150 7-OH products. Every one of them has enormous amounts of 7-OH in it. And they can't say it's trace amounts. So, it's almost unfortunate that people have been so badly misled by these 7-OH manufacturers that we're in the mess that we're in today. So thank you for asking the question. I think that science proves that they obviously have a huge problem that they're dealing with. So there you have it. So with that, I'm going to have to end because they're throwing me out. This club here at the Marriott is closing. But this has been a great discussion. Thank you to everyone. We're going to continue to keep people posted as we go forward. Thanks to every advocate for standing up, for being there. We're going to keep calling on you as we go forward, but thanks to everyone. And certainly, if we don't have the opportunity to converse before, have a wonderful Christmas season and a Happy New Year. Hopefully we'll before then, but if we don't, there you have it. So thanks, everyone.